Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, is made possible in part by Allstate and the Searle Funds at the Chicago Community Trust.
Good evening y bienvenidos to Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices. I'm Alex Hernandez of Univision Chicago Primera Hora, which airs every weekday morning at 5 and 6. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, community members and anti-violence workers on keeping children and young people safe this summer, addressing the nursing shortage and bringing more Latinos into the profession. New Chicago Park District Superintendent Rosa Escareño says it's time to come out and play in the city's parks.
This is what art is, a constant exchange of supporting one another.
And we sit down with choreographer Ron de Jesus as he shares details on his newest piece in celebration of the South Chicago Dance Theater. First off tonight, as the school year winds down and the weather heats up, many Chicago families find themselves balancing their hopes for a joyful summer for their kids against fears of violence. In recent weeks, children as young as 3 years old have been caught by crossfire in incidents of gun violence, and oftentimes those pulling the trigger are themselves very young. But community groups and anti-violence organizations are mobilizing to stop violence before it starts through outreach, intervention, and even some good old-fashioned family fun. Joining us now with more are Jocelyn Monsalvo, a volunteer with Belmont-Cragin United, Emily Jade Aguilar, a youth organizer with Communities United, Paulino Vargas, outreach team member at New Life Centers, and Adam Alonso, CEO of Build Chicago. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And I want to start with Jocelyn. You're a volunteer in your community of Belmont-Cragin on the city's northwest side. How concerned are people in that community about violence, especially violence involving children and young people?
Yes, they're very concerned since the gun violence has gone up incredibly increased, and especially now since the summer's coming, has been more gun violence.
How concerned are you in particular?
I'm very concerned. Even just going to the park, it's like you have to be on the lookout just to see like if there's anything going on, because it could just happen in a matter of seconds.
Adam, go ahead, please.
Even just like sometimes even just going to the store, you have to like be very alert with everything going on.
Yeah, that must be the same feeling, obviously, for everybody in your community. And Adam, your organization, Build Chicago, is an anti-violence organization. How critical is early intervention for keeping kids not only safe, but also from becoming perpetrators of violence themselves?
Yeah, early connection with young people is critical, right? We want to be able to form relationships with them when they're very young, so they have positive adult mentors in their lives. And more importantly, that we can form a relationship with their parents as well, so that we're all working together for the betterment of that young person. And so early prevention, getting in, is absolutely critical. And I think in particular now when we see young perpetrators of violence, what happened? Where were there some gaps? Did we miss a beat somewhere? And so prevention is absolutely key.
Emily, moving with you, you currently work with a group of young women of color. What are their concerns about violence in their communities?
Thank you. That's a really good question. I think ultimately a lot of things play in factors, right? So I think ultimately not having safe spaces for young people to hold community really increases violence, and just not having a space where they're being heard and feeling loved and welcome, but also feeling empowered and having that leadership is very critical in their thoughts of how to reduce violence.
Paulino, we know Little Village has been the site of some very high-profile shootings of children in recent years and even in the past few weeks. Does the age of the victim make a difference in how the community is responding to violence?
Yeah, a little bit. Obviously, if they're younger, you hear more of an outcry from the community, rightfully so, but we try to treat all the victims equally, right? A loss of a life is still a loss of a life, regardless of the age. But yeah, you hear, rightfully so, you hear more outrage over, an 8-year-old girl being shot than you do a 16-year-old male who may be living a lifestyle that people don't really understand or like. So yeah, there's definitely a difference in outrage.
What do you think is needed in Little Village in particular to stop the violence?
Honestly, more opportunities for our young people to get a job, right? Like, unfortunately, a lot of our kids catch cases at a young age, have a record, so not a lot of people are trying to hire them. And there's not enough opportunities. We have One Summer Chicago that comes around once a year, where we hire those type of kids in the community to give them an opportunity. So definitely more funding, more backing from the city to do more programs like One Summer Chicago across the city more often than once, right? Like throughout the year, it'd be great. So that would definitely help. More money, more opportunities.
Speaking of programs, Jocelyn, you say that events and resources like camps and activities can help curb violence. How have you seen that work in your community?
The kids are less involved, like outside, where they're influenced by bad influences, where instead they look for the escape or like the outcry through other activities where it's like art, music, dancing even. They just look for that opportunity outside because obviously they're looking for just like anyone is just looking for love. They just want to feel something that they're obviously not feeling at home.
Right.
So if we could provide these resources and like activities, then we will keep them busy from being busy with like bad influences instead.
Adam, anti-violence organizations have gotten an influx of investments in recent years. How do you measure whether your programs are successful?
Sure. We measure it by looking at participation rates. If we're able to get 100 new young people through the door based on increased funding, and that they are with us over the course of a school year throughout a year, and we do mutual accountability plans with each one, which is goal setting to make sure that they're on track for what they'd like to achieve. That's how we measure, and we would never be in a position to say that because of our program alone, it helped to reduce violence across an entire neighborhood, right? I don't think any one of us could ever say that. Right. But it's a collection of these things that happen together and in tandem. So when you infuse a community with more resources, to Jocelyn's point, like more opportunities for kids to be engaged, it really starts to show over time that young people feel connected rather than disconnected.
Emily, going back with you, what are teens and young adults telling you they need from the community to prevent violence?
Young people have the answers to everything, right? Because we're the ones that are experiencing it ourselves in our communities, whether that's, your geographical community or being Latino or Black or queer, right? And so I think what we're really asking for is to have intentional conversations with us and for us to be part of these conversations of how we can better improve our communities or how we can provide resources, right? Just because we're living in a different world. Something that worked 5 years ago does not work in a pandemic, does not work in a new age with technology. And so when we say have, youth in mind, we really need to activate our young people and give them those leadership skills.
So we need to understand more of what they're going through. That's what you're saying pretty much.
Yes.
Emily, thank you very much. We're very short on time, but I want to ask you this last question. Paulino, many parents are being stretched thin. What should they be looking for in their children as signs that they might be in danger of becoming a victim or even violent themselves?
Definitely the way they dress, right? Certain parts of the neighborhood wear certain colors, so keep an eye out for that. Taggings on notebooks, writings on desks at school, shags, the haircuts, the way they wear their belts, and then obviously who they're hanging out with, right? Everybody in the community knows who's who, so just pay attention to who your kids are hanging out with and get them involved in programs. We have after-school programs, summer programs. There's a boxing gym here, Little League, softball,
Be
basketball.
involved in their lives, and the small details matter.
Involved. Check in on them.
Thank you so much. Jocelyn Monsalvo, Emily Jade Aguilar, Paulino Vargas, and Adam Alonso. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, attracting more Latinos to the nursing field. Stay with us. Throughout the years of the pandemic, the country's nurses have been on the front lines of every aspect of COVID care, making an already challenging profession increasingly difficult. A recent McKinsey survey found that 29% of registered nurses say they were likely to leave their positions working directly with patients or even leaving the workforce entirely. And as the American population ages and needs more health care, finding ways to draw more people into nursing is critical. Joining us now with more are Esther Chamarella, Executive Director of the Chicago Hispanic Healthcare Coalition, and Gladys Rielo, instructor at Chamberlain University's College of Nursing. Thank you both for joining us today. And I want to start with you, Esther. What is culturally competent healthcare, and why do you think it's so important?
Well, thank you because it's beyond the name. I think the important is how you know the culture, whoever the patient you're planning to serve. And for that is the need of having bilingual nurses who are able to be in the front line. And what you mentioned now, the crisis is because the role the nurses play is tremendous, a role to doing more beyond the multiple service they need to offer. So the cultural competence means knowing the belief system of the culture the people serving. And which I mean that you need to know what kind of medication they are taking, how is the effect of medication, how the system, how the legal system work here, because it's totally different. And I think more and more cultural competency is beyond what mean taking the system in the way the Americans serving the patient, when we need to adapt the system to the culture that we're working with. And sometimes the system doesn't explain how they need to deal with the patient who coming from another culture. So the work of the nurses is more like is a nurse, is a doctor, is somebody who listens the concern, is a social worker. So sometimes with the same hat, is need to cover so many areas for the patient they cover. So of course it's overwhelming. They work so many hours. And for them, it's very difficult too. Sometimes it's overwhelming.
Therefore, the importance of diversity in the nursing profession. Gladys, what could healthcare institutions do to not only address current shortages, but also attract more Latinos into nursing?
Definitely. So education is going to be one of the major ways of getting Latina nurses, and they're educating about the jobs that they're offering jobs at higher concentration or community hospitals where we have a higher population of our Latinos. So offering jobs within there as well, and also providing appropriate training to our Latina nurses that are going into the field right now.
Esther, what effect do you think? What effect has the COVID pandemic had on the nursing profession, do you think?
Well, I can give you concrete things. Sometimes how you explain people they need a respirator, how much they need to accept that, how much you need to explain the family about the need of the respirator, how much it will be, explaining the cultural competency for the patient. I think one of the issues fundamentally for the nurses who we train or the university train is the faculty. need to be acquainted with the culture of the people, because sometimes the nurses are not training with patients who are the different culture. So, and that is to understand how those people need you to explain the things. The privacy is an issue. Sometimes you need a consultation of the entire family. Sometimes you don't explain only the patient, but you need to explain to the members of the family. They need to know. And the privacy and the culture, particularly in the Latino community, the family is part of the whole issue, right. All working together in a family. So that's one of the things that in American, we need to change sometime to understand how we serve legally and culturally, how we are addressing illness with the patients.
Gladys, you're an instructor for the next generation of nurses. What are you hearing from them about the barriers they are encountering to becoming a nurse or nurses?
A lot of the barriers that these future nurses encounter are financial barriers. A lot of our students or our candidates are working full time, and in the Latino community, we know that a lot of us are helping our parents, supporting them, or if we have our own families, we are supporting our families as well, sometimes as our parents. So I know financial constraints can be a really big barrier for students. The good thing with my university is that we have an evening weekend program now where our students can work full time and come after work and get their education. There's also the constraints of being worried that they're not going to be successful in the Latino community. We know our parents sacrificed so much for us to come, and we want to make them proud. So we have that high standards on our shoulders that we want to be successful, and that fear can sometimes get in their way.
Definitely. And Esther, we're very short on time, so this will probably be our last question. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the nursing profession right now?
It's economical challenge for the nurse to pay to go into school. Secondly, we need to say the universities need to open more the need of doing more promotion for the Hispanic nurse, working with the UNAM, the Universidad Autónoma de Mexico, working with the international nurses. The coalition used to work with the nurses coming from other countries to teaching them how to pass the exam in order to be able to working here in this country. So there are many ways to acculturate this culture in order to have more in the pipeline nurses who are bilingual. And I said this for the Hispanic community and in other communities.
Much needed in this profession, definitely, but we want to thank definitely all the nurses for everything they have done throughout the pandemic. And I want to thank you both for joining us today, Esther Chamarella and Gladys Reylo. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And we support the nurses. Thank you.
Up next, what the city's Park District has in store for the summer. Stay with us.
Don't miss one of our stories. Get them all delivered to your desktop or mobile device with a subscription to the WTTW News Daily Briefing. Go to WTTW.com/daily briefing and sign up.
Well, Chicago, we made it. The warm weather is finally here, and that means it's time to start planning your summer activities. This week, the Chicago Park District opened registration for all its summer programs, including the one many parents have been waiting for, day camps. Newly appointed Superintendent of Chicago Park District, Rosa Escareño, gave us a look at this year's offerings.
Our camps throughout the city are going to be themed Adventure Starts Here. And what that means is that all the kids that are in camps will be introduced to nature, to sports, health and fitness, culture and arts, really getting their brains and physical bodies working throughout the summer so that when they come home, they'll be a little tired. We will be featuring a girls' play camp this year for the very first time. This is a camp that's going to be running at 11 Park District locations throughout the city. So young women interested in being in sports and just a lot of physical activity and just really building those really positive, skills. Camp runs from July 5th through August 12th, and it's for kids between the ages of 6 and 12. We encourage all families to please register their kids, get them out of the house, and go to your local park district.
Escareño also says that while the park district is still seeking more applicants for lifeguarding and other roles, she's optimistic they will be fully staffed in time for summer swimming.
But one thing, because I'm new here, I'm learning, is that our lifeguards have to meet a very high threshold of safety. So we have to put them through training. They have to pass certain tests, right? Because the lifeguards that you see out there, we're entrusting them with the life of our residents. And so this particular position is of special interest to us. So we want to make sure we get it right. We're definitely hopeful with the numbers that we're seeing. And our priorities are getting the beaches open at the end of May, because that's when the season starts. But our pools begin to open at the end of June. And we're very hopeful that we'll have really good news. But I want to remind people, please apply, get your kids who are good swimmers to go and apply.
Well, you can find more on the park's summer programs on our website. Up next, a local choreographer in collaboration with the South Chicago Dance Theater.
Don't ever miss Chicago Tonight. Subscribe to our podcast. Get a daily download of our show delivered to your desktop or mobile device. Go to WTTW.com/Chicago Tonight podcast and subscribe.
The South Chicago Dance Theater is celebrating 5 years of movement in a showcase, debuting 5 new works by choreographers with Chicago roots. Among those creatives is choreographer, dancer, and artist Ron de Jesus. Arts correspondent caught up with him at Humboldt Park native and shares how he choreographed his piece Hybrid Line ahead of next week's world premiere.
Where I came from culturally, I was very fortunate dance found me accidentally.
That's no exaggeration.
We were in Roberto Clemente on Western and Division back in the 70s, to keep us off the streets. They would have daytime disco from study period from 2 to 4, and they would turn the lobby into a discotheque. So we would hustle, and we would break dance, and we would exert ourselves for 2 hours.
Before Ron de Jesus knew it, he received a dance scholarship and began moving for some of the city's most prominent companies.
Dame Libby Carmichael Fleming saw me every day because since she took flamenco classes, and she goes, go get your GED and I'll give you a scholarship here. So I got my GED and I got a scholarship, and then I danced with her company for a couple of years, and then I went for Joseph Holmes, and I learned Martha Graham technique, and I learned the Alvin Ailey, and I learned jazz, and then from there I went to a modern company, Chicago Repertory Dance Ensemble.
Now he's returning the favor as he pours his experiences into the next generation of dancers with the South Chicago Dance Theater.
Ultimately, they contribute their DNA to the ballet, and we get to our destination much faster. So it was beautiful, and man, were they creative. They were coming up with some serious, innovative, genuine, authentic moves.
With an appreciation for linear and horizontal lines, De Jesus titled the piece Hybrid Line, as he explores shapes within movement, which he says make for a dynamic experience.
And I tried to do a little bit of everything. In the opening number, I give one girl, beautiful dancer, the full floor to improvise for like a minute. No structure, no holdback, go to town.
Described as a synthetic soundscape in an electronic world, De Jesus says he wants to offer a piece almost jarringly different than the rest of the program.
And this shows the range of the company, so I wanted to make sure that I was able to compress that and give them that one little gem, and to let the audience lurch forward in their seats as they watch a little movement texture, and then hopefully make them stand up and appreciate.
Whether it be with the South Chicago Dance Theater or other dancers around the world, De Jesus says he plans to continue to create with collaboration at the forefront.
This is what art is, a constant exchange of supporting one another to hopefully move the audience and educate the audience and give them something, Sometimes I miss the real authentic Hispanic. I got that a lot with the ensemble. I learned passion. I can teach steps and timing. I can't teach fire. I can't teach alma. you can't bottle that. That's got to be in that individual artist.
For Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, I'm Angel Ito.
Again, Hybrid Line makes its world premiere May 20th at the Harris Theater for South Chicago Dance Theater's 5-year anniversary. Visit our website for more information. And that's going to be our show for this weekend. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News, including details on the city's expanded lead service line program. And if you're watching us on Saturday night, know that you can also catch Latino Voices and Black Voices on Sundays beginning at 10 p.m. Don't forget also to tune in to Primera Hora on Univision Chicago every weekday morning. Next week on Latino Voices, Phil Ponce will be here in the host chair. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, I'm Alex Hernandez. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.